1212. What's up? This your boy D, Darius Mitchell. I'm the hip hop Republican. The hip hop Republican. So this week, this last couple of days, the Trump administration cut uh, cut back or restricted cruise lines from going to Cuba. So it reminded me of back in the days, like back in the days in 2004, 2005. It was like right after George W. Bush got reelected, and I was against the Iraq War, and so I thought that we needed a little bit more diversity in the media. So I went and started my own radio show. It was on 1060 in Boston, WBIX. So I started this show on my birthday in December, and the show ended up failing. But some things came out of there successful. Uh, I was the first person to put Deval Patrick on the radio in the New England market. He was the he eventually became. This is 2005, early February 2005. Later became governor in 2007, 2006. He was elected 2007. He became governor when the Democratic Party, what the hell is going on here? Of course they're gonna start talking while I'm doing my little thing, and the bell's ringing. So Howard Dean, who I liked a lot, who I covered in New Hampshire during 2003 until his fall until 2004, I liked a lot. So on my radio show, I endorsed Howard Dean to be the Democratic uh, chairman. Howard Dean became the Democratic chairman, a Vermont guy at a time when the Democratic Party was looking for diversity. But Howard Dean had traveled the whole country, and Howard Dean was the first person to speak up against the Iraq War. And I was also the first one to be reading. I was reading Dreams of My Father by Barack Obama, which had been republished. And I said that Barack Obama could, whoa, thunder, could be the next president. I said that Barack Obama could be the next president because of his foreign policy. He could have a different foreign policy from the 90s and the 70s and the 80s. He could have a relationship with Africa, which America needed, because China was and is moving in, taking all of Africa's resources and putting Africa in debt. This was happening back in 2004, 2005. I used to read about it. China was in the Caribbean working with Cuba, and China was making oil deals with Iran. So So back to the Cuba thing. So one day, I was on my radio show. I would have a Saturday radio show with my baby mama, and we would talk politics. And it cost me. It was $700 an hour. It was WBIX in Boston. So that WBIX signal 1060, it's heard in all six. It was heard in all six New England states and outside of those states, just like 1030 WBZ is. So one day I do a show on Cuba and how the U.S. farmers miss out on Cuba business to Vietnam, to China, to Russia. Like Cuba had to go buy rice from Vietnam instead of buying rice from Iowa. They go buy products from China, Vietnam, instead of buying products from America. And I was like, during the show, I was like, why do we have an embargo against Cuba? It's a dumb embargo, it's an old embargo, and it's time for the embargo to come down, right? So with President Trump, he's just a jerk, but he ended the cruise ship travel to Havana. President Obama was the president who was loosening up restrictions on Cuba and on Iran. And that's really the real reason why Trump is messing with Cuba right now. He's trying to undo any accomplishments that President Obama had. So this day, I did my show on Cuba, and I was done with the show. So me and my kid's mother, she was 7 months pregnant. She was 6 or 7 months pregnant. It was like late March, April. And I lost my license when I was 20 years old. I had a marijuana charge. I left probation for another state. I wasn't going to stay in Delaware and go sit in Smyrna, DCC, Delaware Correctional Center, or Gander Hill on some marijuana probation violation. So I left. So I had a family and I didn't have no driver's license. So when I'm leaving the radio studios that day in Framingham, it was right behind Framingham State. And I'm driving without a driver's license, and my kid's mother's in the passenger seat. She's like 6 months, 7 months pregnant with my son Tony. So I'm driving down Route 9, and I see this state trooper on the other side of the road. You know, Route 9 doesn't have many U-turn places, but while I was driving, I see the state trooper racing in the other direction, and he looks right over at me. And it was a look like, I'm gonna get you, nigga. And I knew it. He was coming for me. And it wasn't because I had done anything wrong. He was looking for me. He was coming for me. It was just me and my kid's mother, who was 6, 7 months pregnant, with my son Tony. So I see him come, he makes his U-turn, so I pull into the gas station and see if he's gonna pass me. I pull into the gas station on Route 9, right before you get on the exit to 495 South, 495 North to come to Lowell. It has a big sign. So I should have let my kid's mother get in the driver's side, but I didn't. She was 6 months, 7 months pregnant. So I drive, I leave the gas station, and the state trooper sitting right there at the exit entrance. and he's waiting for me. So I get on the highway 495. He follows me, the state trooper, Massachusetts state trooper, and he passes me. He see if I'm going to panic and do something crazy. He gets in front of me, and I just sit there and drive quietly. So after a while, maybe I get beside him and try to play it off and drive past him. We're both doing 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour on 495 north towards Lowell, which is 2 hours from hour and a half, 2 hours from where we are. So finally, the Massachusetts state trooper pulls me over. Let me have your driver's license and everything, insurance. So I go, oh, I don't have no driver's license, whatever. I'm just driving my kid's mother home because she's pregnant, 6 months, and she ain't feeling well. And I'm just trying to get her home safe. So the state trooper runs my name, and it shows that I had missed court for a driving violation. I missed court for a ticket that I had missed. So we're out in Framingham. So he arrests me, and tells my kid's mother where I'm going to be at. And some state trooper, Massachusetts state trooper, barracks in the middle of nowhere, 2 hours from Lowell. So I needed $500 to get out of jail, and he couldn't. He could have let me go, and I could have. It was Saturday evening. He could have let me go, and I could have went to court Monday. It was a driving violation. It wasn't armed robbery. It wasn't kilos of cocaine or guns. It was a driving violation. So anyway, he takes me to the barracks. So my kid's mother has to go to drive 6 months, 7 months pregnant, had to drive to Lowell, borrow $500 from her brother, and come back 2 hours, drive to Lowell 2 hours, and come back and get me 2 hours, $500. So she does that. But my point is, the reason why he came after me that day was because of my show about ending the Cuba embargo. And he came, when that show was over, that Massachusetts state trooper was looking for me. The way he looked at me in his eyes, it was like he was looking for like the worst person on earth. It was crazy, and I'll never forget that look in his eyes. And let's go back to the politics of Cuba, the Cuban embargo, 60 years old, 13 presidents. And you got businesses, American businesses, international businesses, who have cruise ships and have booked trips for people. Have booked trips for people to go to Cuba. People have been going to Cuba since Obama left office. And President Trump, John Bolton, they're going to cancel these trips abruptly this week. And it's not because Cuba is a danger to America's national defense. It's because they don't like black people. They don't like brown-skinned people. And you can look at their cabinets. They don't have any there's no black people in the Oval Office. There's no brown people in the president's immediate inner circle. And that's the thing. The difference between President Obama didn't get elected because he was black. Part of why he got elected is because he had a different foreign policy from Hillary Clinton, from John Kerry, from Joe Biden. They had a foreign policy of the 80s and the 90s. President Obama was the guy that we would say, oh, he'll have a relationship with Africa, which he did. He'll loosen up. He'll loosen up things with Cuba, which he did. He became the first president to travel to Cuba since Calvin Coolidge in 1928. President Obama would be the guy who would have a better relationship with Iran. He wouldn't have a 1980s relationship, Ronald Reagan relationship, like Hillary or Kerry or Biden. He would have his, and President Obama did soften up that relationship, and John Kerry became his Secretary of State, and he had the Iran deal, and it worked for everybody. There was no military escalation or any tension in the region. It was all good. But you have President Trump, John Bolton. They want to have the facade that the black man, this is what they do. They want to have the facade that a black man can't do big things in this country. And the Iran, President Trump, you hear him say, the Iran deal is the worst deal, whatever. No, it wasn't. It was a good deal. Oh, Cuba is this. Oh, the Castros, this and that. President Trump was just with Prince Charles. Charles and his wife, Camilla, were just in Cuba doing the same thing Obama was. But President Trump didn't have no problem with Prince Charles doing that. He has a problem with President Obama doing that. And they just weak. President Trump, John Bolton, they just weak. They weak, and they're only holding America back, trying to keep America in the 1970s, trying to keep America in the 1980s. It's 2019, and America, we need to move forward. And just because President Trump and his whole cabal, John Bolton, don't see value in diversity, that don't mean the rest of America has to follow him. And that's my little story about my radio show and Cuba and my early support. I was supporting President Obama in 2005. I was supporting. Not only that, I put my money where my mouth is. I was reading his book on the radio in 2005. He became the first black president. I was the first one to put Deval Patrick on the radio, who became the second black governor in American history. That's no coincidence. He became the first Democratic governor in Massachusetts in 20 years. And since he left 8 years, there hasn't been a Democratic governor either. President Obama became the first known president of African descent. And it all happened between 2004 and 2016. And American people better wake up. This is the important time right now. Like, the Cuban people aren't mean people. They like Americans. They welcome Americans. Iranian people, they protest their leaders. They don't like their leaders. Just like Americans don't like their leaders. And we need to do different things. It's 2019, 2020, and America needs to be smarter about their foreign policy. And I don't agree with President Trump stopping those cruise ships. He's only defeating America. He ain't defeating Cuba. He's defeating America. I don't agree with President Trump's Iran policy. He's not defeating Iran. He's only defeating America. And this is Darius, the hip-hop Republican. And you guys have a good summer. And remember, The election is now, 2020. Hip hop Republican.